Grace and peace to you. This is Pastor Morgan from Zora United Church of Christ, and this is my third Wednesday web episode. And I had a couple of people comment about the blank wall behind me in the previous videos. So, as you can see, I moved the chair over by the window so that you can get a glimpse of the church. I don't know how well that's going to show up in the video, but at least it's something different to look at. We're continuing to struggle through the COVID-19 pandemic and trying to find out what we can do as people of faith, as a church community, to continue to support one another and love one another. And that's exactly what I want to talk about tonight. I've been in conversation with many of you. I've been trying to check in by phone, by email, text, Facebook, whatever, and check in with you. And most all of our folks are doing fairly well, and it's great to hear. There are some of the folks that are a little worried about what's going to happen, and the reality is we don't know exactly how long this is going to last or exactly what the ramifications are going to be. But at this point, I want to stress to you that we are taking everything seriously, that we need to be staying at home. That's why we have suspended in person worship. And yes, that means Palm Sunday and Easter. There will be no church services here. And I know that is difficult for many of us. I don't know that I've ever missed Easter Sunday worship, but this is what we need to do. And extraordinary times like this call for extraordinary measures. And I've seen some of the news articles about some of the churches and the pastors who have ignored these warnings and continued to worship. And I don't know exactly what's motivating them to do that, but I can tell you that when I read the gospel, and I've been studying the word a lot in these past few weeks, everything about our faith, everything that Jesus taught, tells us that we need to be concerned with one another, that we all live in this sort of intricate connectivity. And it's no more evident than now that we are connected in very real ways. So, whenever we decide to do something as individuals, we've got to know that it impacts the lives of people around us. So, staying home right now is the most important thing we can do. I've been spending a lot of time on the internet and social media, and I'm seeing a lot of good jokes and memes about that. Sitting on the couch and watching TV. Hey, we've got this, right? Uh, it is simple, but it's not easy, and it's important for everybody to get the message. And so I've thought about the reasons that people still may not be taking it as seriously as they need to. And we've heard from people, our leaders, we've heard from all sorts of health professionals, and they're saying that we need to heed these guidelines and these warnings. And in situations where the folks are not doing that, then the leadership is having to do even more extreme measures to get people to stay at home. So I want to pose a question to you this evening. Who do you need to hear it from? Some people say, well, I don't like what the governor has to say because I didn't vote for that person. Or whatever the local leadership is. They don't like them, they don't trust them, whatever. But when you have people from all sorts of leadership positions, when you have people from the healthcare industry, scientists, over and over again saying, stay at home, wash your hands. We've got to do all we can to flatten this curve. it's important that you heed that message. So tonight, I want to share with you what I believe is Jesus telling us that very same thing. From the Gospel of John in chapter 15, verses 12 and 13, Jesus is teaching his disciples. And he says to them, "This is my commandment, to love one another just as I have loved you. No one has greater love than to give up one's life for one's friends." And we know that in the context that Jesus was teaching the disciples, there was the clear analogy that someone physically giving their life for another person is the greatest extension of love, an example of love. And we talk about that with first responders and military personnel that literally put their lives on the line so that others can be safe is a tremendous act of love. So I want to say to you that putting our lives on hold for a few weeks, a couple of months, in order that someone else literally might be able to live is a great example of love. It's a great example of the love that Jesus shared with the disciples, shared with everyone he was in ministry with. And it's a great way for us to understand that what we are doing is, in fact, an act of love. When we think about the ways in which not heeding the guidelines, not obeying the warnings, could adversely impact an innocent person maybe halfway around the world, it's frightening. And it's something we should all take very seriously. And I know that for many folks, it's difficult. I know that people are losing jobs and income, that there are all sorts of tragic ways that this virus is impacting people all around the world and right here in our community. But during Lent, we're supposed to think about our own sinful nature. And anything we do to act in selfish ways is a sin. Whenever we don't heed the warnings and the guidelines because we think we know better, or we think, well, nobody's going to tell me what I can and can't do, we ignore this command from Jesus, a command to love one another and to put the needs of the other person ahead of our own. How else would we as people of faith react to a situation like this than to do all we can to help prevent the spread of the virus, to help prevent the loss of lives, to help prevent overwhelming our healthcare industry and other first responders and emergency workers that are working overtime, are very adversely impacted by all of this. All we have to do is stay home. And it's a great Lenten discipline for us. I saw someone post on Facebook the other day, "This is the lentiest Lent I've ever lentened." And I think that's exactly right. This is a time of self-reflection and time for us to be in prayer and study, and we have time to do that this year. This will be something that we remember for the rest of our lives. This is a monumental moment in the history of our country and of the world. And we will remember the ways in which we treated each other. I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, that that's one way that this pandemic will be measured, not just by the number of people infected and the number of lives lost, but the way in which we treated each other. And there's been wonderful stories shared about how people are going out of their way to change their livelihoods and lifestyles to help others. And those are fantastic examples of loving one another. But for most of us, one thing we can do is simply stay home. Stay home and stay in touch. Reach out on the phone, on the internet to stay in contact with each other. Check in on people who may not have a lot of family and friends around them, and let them know that you love them. Let them know that if there's anything they need, you'll be glad to help, and to know that you're willing to give up your life, your lifestyle, your habits, your schedule in order to save someone else's life. Because Jesus tells us that there's no greater love than this. So there's no greater love than staying home right now. And we'll continue to hold all of you in my prayers during this Lenten journey, and hope you enjoy our web videos. God bless.